Hello and welcome to Control-Delete Tutorials. My name is Jason, and today we're going to be looking at part 6 of the series that I had started with creating kind of a simple tank game in Unity. So if you haven't seen the other videos, you should definitely check those out before you step into this one. In this video we're going to be looking at setting up some enemies. So we've already kind of got some things started here where I can have some basic movement controls. Let me make that full screen there. I'll try that again. That's better. So we have some tank controls where we can move, and if I hit the space bar I can shoot, and whoops, left click there, and if I left click I can also shoot, and I can hit these objects, but they're not really enemies. They don't really hit back. I can also use my scroll wheel to turn the turret. Super good at shooting. Oh, come on. There we go. Okay, so that's what we've got currently set up, but like I said, these objects don't really fight back, so we want to create something that will fight back. So what I'm going to do in my prefabs here is I'm going to take my tank parent, and I'm going to just drop that down and create a prefab of that object. And you can see here under tank parent we have that tagged as player, so that's really important for some parts coming up, and some parts we've already covered. So you should already have that if you've started from the beginning. So the next part we're going to do is create our enemy. So what's nice is if I go to my 3D assets here and I go to my let's just say tank idle was my basic object, and I just drag that in here, and I'm just going to take my tank parent, my player object, and I'm just going to turn that off. So I'm going to create my enemy based off of this tank that I've already created. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take tank idle, and I'm just going to rename this to enemy object, something like that. And underneath here we have some things we don't really need, so I don't really need these like piston things in the back. I can just delete those. I'll just say continue, and I'm going to take off the tires as well. That way I can really differentiate my enemy here. So you can see this object that I have is rotated around, so I'm just going to set that to 0 so it's facing the correct direction. And my turret should also be facing the correct direction. But something I want to keep in mind is this number 0.4, which will come in handy later. This is how high the turret is above the ground, which, again, like I said, it will come in handy later. So this is going to be my enemy object. So what I'm going to do under the materials here for this, I have my basic like tank color. I'm going to hit Control D to duplicate this, and I'm going to call this enemy tank, and I'm going to just apply that to both my tank body and my turret. I'm going to change the color here to something red, so something that makes it a little more easy to tell that it's an enemy. Okay. So the next part is setting up some of the attributes for this. So one thing that I want to do is I want to go to my prefabs, and my projectile here is named tagged as player projectile. So that's also going to come in handy here in a minute with the next script that we're going to write. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a script for the enemy's health. So I'll go into my scripts, and I'll right click, and I'm going to call this one enemy health. I'll just hit enter there and hit enter again to open that up. Alright, so under enemy health we need to create, well, first, part of the top section here where it says using Unity Engine, using system.collections, we're going to add to this, we're going to use be using the Unity editor, obviously, Unity editor dot scene management and semicolon. So this is going to allow us to restart our level if the player dies. So we have that, and we don't need to have the start function there, so or method. So we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to create a variable here. So this will be a public int called health, and we'll just set that equal to 1 for the time being. So what this means is if the enemy is hit once, it'll die, and that'll be the end of the enemy. So an update here, we're going to say if we'll say if health is less than. Actually, we're not going to need scene management for this one. I'm going to need that for the player health, and I probably just borrowed this from here, but we can leave that in there so that way if all the enemies are dead or something like that, we could change to level 2 or something like that. So we'll leave that there for now. So we have, oh man, what am I doing? Forgetting all of my stuff here. So if health is less than 1, we're going to say destroy, and this object is going to be parented to another object, the enemy. So what I want to do is, instead of just destroy game object, I'm actually going to tell it to destroy game object dot transform dot root, so that's going to be the parent object dot game object. So it's going to destroy the parent, which is going to also destroy this object. And then we're going to create another function here called void on collision. Enter. And we're going to feed in here collision, and we're going to look for the other object. So we'll just name this collision object that we're detecting other. And so we're going to say if other dot game object, oh, let's try to spell correctly here, game object dot compare tag, and the string that we're going to put in is going to be player projectile, based on exactly how we named it in here. So if we go to the prefabs, projectile, player projectile, so that's a capital P on both player and projectile, and in our script should be capital P for both. So if this happens, if we detect that the projectile enters our collision or collides with us, we're going to say health minus minus. Minus minus is just shorthand for writing health minus 1, basically. And then that'll be it for our enemy health script. So we'll just say save. We'll just do save all, just in case our other ones weren't saved. And so that means that our enemy object here will need to have a collider on it. So we'll just put a box collider, and we'll make it a little bit bigger so it covers everything. So I'll just make my size here and the Y a little bit taller, maybe 0.5. Move this up. Oh, let's go down a little bit more. There we go. We'll go just a little bit more forward. Actually, that's fine. So if our projectile hits here, it should kill this object. So currently we are not paired or parented to anything. And we do have our position and rotation here set to 0. So I'm going to go ahead and create our parent object, but we can go ahead and put our script on here. So enemy health. And so we have our health there. So we should be able to test that out to see if it is hit. It should cause it to disappear. Yeah, should be okay. I'm trying to make sure we're not missing anything. So I'm just going to move this up here for now, and we'll play our game. Oh, helps when we turn our tank back on. There we go. And hit the space bar, and there we go. The object disappears. It's dead. So good, that works. So that's our first part there, but that would be kind of boring for our tank. So what I'd like to do is create a simple animation for this tank so that it just has kind of a movement that it does. So what I'm going to do is just set that up now. So I'll go to my Windows and I'll go to Animation. And let's bring this over here. And so we're going to create an animation for this. So I'll just go into my assets and let's make a new folder. I'll call this anims, and we'll just call this enemy move. And this is going to be a very simple animation. So what it's going to do is it's basically going to move. So we'll go to, let's say, we'll start off by holding our position for, let's say, 30 frames, something like that. So actually we'll do our movement first. So I'm just going to zoom this out a little bit. So we'll go to 2 seconds and we'll move it over here. So we'll type in like -3. And then we'll hold that position. So we can just Control C, Control V, copy and paste that. And then we'll go 2 more seconds. And we'll move it back to where it started. So we'll just type in 0 here. And we'll go to 5 seconds. Copy and paste that. Control C, Control V. We'll go 2 more seconds. And we'll type in 3, which will move us over there. We'll hold that for half a second. Control C, Control V. Okay. And then after that, we'll have it take us back to 0. And we'll hold our 0 position. So right now what we should see is our tank moves over. And you'll notice it doesn't stop. It actually overshoots its position. And that's because of the way the keyframes are set up here. So there's an easy way to fix that. Let's turn off play. And we'll go back to the beginning here. So what we're going to do is we're going to change our curves, how our curves and our smoothing is done. So our left tangent, we're going to set to, our right tangent, we're going to say linear. So our right tangent is what happens from this point to the next point. We'll go to the left one, and we'll set it to linear. And now you'll see when I do that, if I scrub through here, it stops. So we're basically going to do that to every set. So right and left. So select the first one, right, linear. Select the next group, left, linear. right linear, and left linear. And then the last set, right, and finally left. Alright, so now we'll hit play. Okay, so we should see it stop, goes to the next one, stop. So it's going to do this as its basic movement. And luckily we don't have to program any of this, because if I go to the animator now, it's just set up to currently loop through enemy move. So we don't have to do anything to it, which is nice. So you can see it's already set up to loop. So that's all we need for that. But you can see that it's facing the wrong direction. And what if I want to place these all over the place, but I want them to be able to change their position? So to do that, I need to parent it to another object. So I'm going to go to game object create empty, and I will call this enemy tank parent. Okay, so I'm now going to take my enemy object and I will parent it to this. And before I do that, this should be moved. Oh, that wasn't smart of me. I ended up moving all of this over, so what I'm going to do is I'll copy that. I'm going to unparent it here for a second. Alright, so this is my Z direction here on the enemy. And I'm just going to copy that number. I'll go to my enemy tank parent. I'll paste that number in, and then I'll parent it. That way they're at the same position to each other. And then I can just take enemy tank parent here, and if I move it back, it'll move it back to here. So I'll create one of these. I'll just copy this and move it back. Let's see. I'm holding control right now so I can snap. So I'll set one at -10. And I'll duplicate this. Actually, what I'll do is I'm going to create a prefab of this. So let's go ahead and just move that back to 0 for a moment. Why isn't that moving back? It's being really weird. Alright, let's make sure I didn't lose my animations. Hopefully not. Stop. Okay. Alright. Good. It had just gotten rid of my parent there. Alright, so we'll do that again. Create empty. And tell you what we'll do. We're just going to copy the transforms here. Copy component. Paste component values, which will line both of those up. And I'll go ahead and rename this. Enemy tank parent, and we'll drop that back on there. Apologize for that. That's kind of a pain. And then I'll just set this back at 0. Okay, so we'll create our prefab from that. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to create a tag. So we'll hit plus here and we'll create a new tag. We'll just call this enemy. So in case we need that at any point, we'll have it. So we'll go and we'll parent that. Thought those were already parented. Nothing wants to behave today, obviously. Alright, set that back to 0. Alright, let's see if we're doing okay now. Okay, so if I hit play, it ends up moving right back there. That's because the keys for this object Now I'm realizing what I had done. If I set this back to 0, the problem is right now all of my Z keys for right here have been set up ahead of me, which I don't want them. I want them to be back here. So I'm going to delete those keys. And then from the beginning here, I'm just going to set this back at 0. And I'll make sure to copy that to the end. That way it keeps that position. So I'll just copy and paste that. So now it'll be 0, 0, 0 from the start there. Alright, that's good. Yeah, I was wondering what was going on there. I was kind of confused, and that happens to me. So, alright, so we'll go ahead and parent that now. So this object will be tagged as enemy. Alright, so we'll go ahead and save our scene. And I'm going to take my enemy tank parent and create a prefab out of it. So that way if I update settings on one, I can do that to all the rest of them. So I'm going to take my enemy tank here and I'm going to move this back to like -10 that direction. And I'm going to duplicate that, Control D. And so what's nice is if I go the other direction here and I rotate this, the animation is still on the enemy object. So if I hit play, you'll see that even though I've moved them, they're now staying in their spots up there and down here. Could have swore I just saw the one keyframe screw up here at the very end. I want to make sure that the movement here for these right, linear, left, linear. I think I had undone a bunch of stuff earlier, and I think that, yeah, okay, that's good. Sorry about that. Alright, so we'll take both of these objects. I'm going to go from their center point. I'm going to duplicate them. Control D. And I'll just rotate this. I'll make it a little easier to get my other two. Okay, so all these objects are working off of the same object, so any changes I make will happen to all of them. So we'll just save there. Okay, so we have enemy health on all of them. If I shoot any of them, they should die. So let's just test to make sure. I'll shoot one at random and make sure that they do in fact die. Good. And we'll try this one as well. Yeah, good. Alright, so the enemies die when you shoot them. That's good. So the next part is we want to have, we want to be able to create an enemy behavior. So the enemy behavior that I want, and we could have done this in the same script, but I do like to separate some of my scripts in case I want to use them for other things later on down the road. So I'll write multiple scripts that technically could all be put, enemy health could be put into enemy behavior. So I'm going to create another script, and this is going to be, and I could call this attack behavior really if I wanted to, but we'll just call this enemy behavior. And we'll open that up. So for this one, we're going to create two variables, and we're actually not going to use start or update. So first we're going to start off with our integer. So we'll say public int enemy health, and we'll set that equal to 1. Why do I have enemy health here? May not need that one. I'm not sure if maybe I was going to add health in and then I just never used that part of it. So we'll do the second part. Public bool attack. And I'll set that equal to false because we do not want it to attack from the beginning. And we're going to say void on trigger enter. And we're going to feed in another collider. So this one's going to be collider, not collision, because we're using trigger. So we're going to say collider other. And we're going to say if other dot game object dot compare tag, and our compare tag we're looking for is player. So if we come into contact with the player, then we're going to say attack equals true. And then we're going to copy this whole thing. So we'll copy it all the way down to here. We'll hit enter a couple times. We'll paste this in, and here we're going to say on trigger exit. So if our player exits this trigger area, then we'll say false. Attack equals false. So that'll be our basic enemy behavior. And I do think that I had this set up so that I could do the health in this one. So I apologize if I confused you there. Alright, so that'll be our enemy behavior. Now currently this isn't going to do anything, but if we apply it to our enemy, so I really only have to apply it to one of them, so we'll just pick that one there. And right now there's a collider on the enemy object, but we want to create a collider on the parent object, and we're going to make that one a trigger. So we're going to go down to physics, and we'll do a sphere collider, and I'm going to make my radius here pretty large, so that way it starts firing as soon as we enter that. So I'll just put this at 5, and we're going to say is trigger. Okay, and then we're going to add our script here for enemy behavior. And so what should happen is I'm going to keep this selected and I'm not going to maximize. When my player enters here, it should check attack. And when I exit, it should uncheck. So let's just check that. So we'll back up. Okay, player enters and we see attack is checked. And we leave, attack is unchecked. Okay, good. So that part is completed there. So we will give access to another script to this so that it can start firing, which is going to be the next part. The next part is going to be a bit more confusing. So what we're going to do is we're going to create our spawn enemy projectile, which we've kind of used part of this in our last video where we had created our player projectile. And this one's going to be a little bit more involved. So I'm just going to right click, create C# script, and we'll call this spawn enemy projectile. Okay, there we go. And we'll open that up. So if we look at our spawn projectile script, we had this part, if input, and it will spawn a projectile. Well, that's fine, but we don't want the enemy to work based off of a button press. So we will end up using this part, but it'll be handled a little bit differently. So we're going to start off with 2 variables. First one is going to be public game object, and we'll call that projectile. So remember, that's going to hold our prefab for our enemy projectile. And then public float delay equals 1.0. So this is going to make it so our enemy only fires once. Forgot my F there. Once a second. So that way it's just not spamming, thousands and thousands of bullets. And then we have to be able to basically get our enemy behavior script from this script. So we have two more variables we're going to put. So we're going to have another public game object, and we'll call this enemy parent. And from this, we're going to save a variable. We're going to save the script that's currently on that enemy. So we're going to say public enemy behavior. So you can see that comes up. So it's referencing this script by using this. And we're going to say enemy behavior script. Okay. So basically this script and all of its attributes are getting stored here. Okay, so under start, we're going to say enemy parent equals game object. So game object dot transform dot root dot game object. So that makes sure it gets the script from its own from the parent object. And this is going to be put on another game object that's under the turret, just like ours. That's why we have to get it from the parent object. And then we're going to say enemy behavior script equals enemy parent dot get component in children. I should have done that all in one shot. So dot get component in children, and the component we're looking for is going to be enemy behavior. Okay, so it's going to store that here. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff, but basically what we're saying is this script is referencing the parent's enemy behavior. So that way we can get the information from that specific enemy. If we just reference the script in general, it would make all of the objects firing, and that would be bad. We don't want to do that. Okay, so that's it for start. Under update, we're going to say delay. So we're calling out the delay variable we wrote. And we're going to clamp this. And so we're going to use mathf dot clamp. And we're going to use, we should be able to use 0, 1. And we just have to tell it what to clamp. So the reason I'm using 0, 1, this only works if we are delaying this to a 0 or a 1. Otherwise, we have to put other information in here. So this is going to make sure that the float value is either 0.0 all the way to 1.0 and nowhere outside of that range. So that's why we're clamping it. So we're going to say if delay is greater than, helps if we spell things right here, if delay is greater than 0.0f, then we're going to tell it to subtract some time. So we'll say delay minus equals time dot delta time, which removes 1 second per second, essentially. Okay, so that's our first if statement. We're also going to say if delay is less than, man, why can I not spell delay today? Delay is less than 0.0 f, then delay, you know what, I'm going to do 0.01, because that way I know it's going to get all the way to 0, but this just kind of catches the script. So if it is less than 0.0, we're going to set delay to equal 1.0 f. So it's kind of going to go through this loop of subtracting all the way to 0, starting over, subtracting all the way to 0. And then what I can do is if enemy behavior script dot attack, so this is saying that if in the enemy behavior script, if attack equals true, so that's what this means. So that's true, that would be false. So if we are allowed to attack, and if delay equals 1.0 f, so if both of these things are true, we're going to do our instantiate. So if you still have your other script open from your projectile spawn, we can copy this, Control C and Control V. So we're going to instantiate projectile, which will be our enemy projectile there, at the position and rotation of our spawn object. That's everything for our enemy spawn script. So we'll save all. And we need to set up our spawner. So we're going to do that exactly the same way. So I'm going to go to my enemy tank, and I'm going to turn off my tank parent here just for a second. So I'm going to go to my enemy tank parent, and I'm going to move it back to 0 for now. And I'm going to create a empty game object, and we'll just call this enemy projectile spawner, and we'll just reset its coordinates here, all of its transforms, I mean. We'll move this out in front of the tank, so I'll just say 0.7, 0.9, that's fine. And we're going to rotate it 10 degrees. Oops, negative 10 degrees. That way it's pointed in the same direction as our turret. And we're going to parent this to our turret. And then we'll put the spawn enemy projectile on there. So we don't have anything currently for our projectile for it, so we'll make one. That's going to be the easiest part. We have our delay, we have our enemy parent, which isn't set, but as soon as we go to play the game, it will get that information by getting the root object here, which our root object has our enemy behavior script on it, which is what this will be getting from it. And I only make these public variables so that we can see these actually working here, so I can do a little troubleshooting. I can always go back into the script and turn those from public and just turn that off. So we need our projectile. So the nice thing is we have a projectile, and it's the player projectile. It is already set up so that it has projectile move, and it will destroy after so much time. So what I'm going to do is actually duplicate this, and I'm going to rename this projectile to projectile underscore enemy, and I need to have a enemy projectile tag. So I'll just hit plus here, and we'll do enemy projectile. Okay. We'll come back to our prefabs, go to our projectile enemy, and set that as enemy projectile. It's really all we should have to do for this one. It might be nice to change the color on this. I'm not really that worried about that for now, but we could always do that. I mean, actually we could just use the same one that's on here. If I drop this in my scene, and we'll see it under there, so we'll see it's white. If I just go back to my materials and grab enemy tank, I can just drop that on there, and that way it'll also be the same color. So even though I said I wasn't going to do it, I still ended up doing it. So I can just delete that back out of the scene. Well, apply the changes there to the prefabs, and I can just delete that out of the scene. Okay, so under our spawner, if I go back to my scripts and we see spawn enemy projectile, I can set that prefab to be in there as the default, and I can go to my actual one here, and if I hit right click and say reset, it'll put that default one in there. So now my spawner is in there, so it should shoot that out. So I'm going to apply changes to all the prefabs so they'll all get the updates, and I'll just set this one back to -10, so it's back where it was. So if I hit play, and I did it again, let's turn the tank back on, and let's set this to full screen. And we'll just go over to these guys because we can already see them. There we go. I was worried it wasn't going to work. So as I get close, now it starts shooting. And you can notice it's not doing anything to me. Well, that's because we haven't written that part of the script yet for our player. And you can see the projectiles work exactly the same way as ours. I could make them a little heavier, so that way when they hit us, it kind of moved us around a little, but we'll just leave that, for an extra flourish that we can do. So our next one is going to be our player health. So we're going to set that up right now. We already have a script kind of using the same thing, our enemy health. So I'm actually going to duplicate that one. So I can hit Control D, and I'll just click to rename this to player health. Now what's important is when I open this up, I have to change the name on this because it still says enemy health here, which is why I'm getting a huge error. So I just rename that to player, and I'll just save everything, and then that fixes that part. Okay, so this one, as you can see, we're using Unity Editor Scene Management. So that's going to be important. So we're going to give our player 3 health instead of just 1. That way, we're not getting shot and just dying instantly. So we're going to say if health is less than 1, which means we're dead. We're going to change this to reloading the scene. So we're going to say editor editor scene manager, yep, dot load scene, and we're going to load scene 0. Currently we don't have a scene in our editor, so I'll just pop over to Unity. We're going to go to edit, File, Build Settings, and our build settings here, there's currently not a scene in here. So we can just go to our scenes, and the scene I'm working right now is tank and boxes and guns. And when I put that in, you can see that it is given an index of 0. So that's the scene that it will load. So when I die, it'll reload the same scene. Okay, that's it for that one. And then we're going to say void on collision enter if other game object compare tag, but not player projectile, we want enemy projectile. So if enemy projectile hits us, we lose health. And if our health is less than 1, it reloads the scene. So we'll save that. And we'll go back to Unity, go back to our tank parent, and we will put our script for player health. Let's see, player health. And you can see that we have 3 health. So I'll leave that on. I'm not going to maximize just yet. We'll just play it, and we'll see if this counts down whenever I die. So it hit me. I went down to health 2. And there we go, I died. Now you notice when the scene reloads, all the lighting changes and gets weird. I don't know why it does that. It's something with Unity, but when you build your game to actually run, you shouldn't have that problem. It should just play again. The other thing I want to make sure is that all the other objects are not firing. Good. So when I'm in the trigger of 1, it shoots for just that 1. We have one more part that could make this a little bit more difficult, and hopefully everything works fine with this. This is if we want to get if we want our turrets on our enemies to actually point towards us. So right now these enemies are set up pretty simple, but let's say I want to create a second enemy that maybe is stationary, but it tracks our position. So I'm going to go ahead and save my scene here before I do this. Save my project as well. So I'm going to duplicate our enemy. So let's say these ones don't track you. Let's say we want to create a second one that does track us. So I'm going to take this one. I'm going to hit Control D. And I'll name this enemy parent, let's say stationary. Okay, and on the stationary one, I'm going to take the enemy object and I'm going to remove the animator. So now it won't move back and forth. So these ones will be set up to where it stays in one position. Everything else for it is set up exactly the same. So I'm going to go ahead and just move this to 0, and we'll move this to 0, and we'll put this in our prefabs. Alright, so we're going to write a script that allows the turrets on this tank to rotate towards us, and that'll be the last thing we do in this video, and that'll kind of wrap up the series at this point until I get some comments to let me know some other things that we could do. So, final script, we're going to call this target player. We'll open that up. Okay, so this one's got a bit more to it. So what we're going to do is, just like before, oops, accidentally hit backspace instead of enter. We're going to create a player variable. So we'll do public game object player. We'll also have a speed, a float speed. So we'll say public float speed, and we'll set that equal to 0.6. And this is something I came up with, so it doesn't track us too fast. It just, gives us enough to kind of get around the object. So we're going to go to Start, and we're going to make player equal to GameObject dot find GameObject with tag. Make sure we do object and not objects, because there's only one, and we want to make sure we're only using one. And our string, the tag we're looking for, is player. So player equals player. So on update here, we're going to say we're going to create a couple of variables that are within update. So we're going to create a vector3. So if you remember, that basically is looking for like an X, Y, and Z position, something like that. So this is going to be player direction. So player, I'm going to say dir, just because I like saying dir. And we'll make that equal to a new vector3. And in here we're going to put player dot transform dot position dot x. So we did this in our previous video when we were having the camera target the player. So that'll be our x position. And then very similarly, actually we'll just copy and paste this. And we'll leave x off. So this is going to be y and z. So it's targeting the players x, y, and z. Now typically we could have just done dot position, but I need to change only one part of this. So instead of just the y, if you remember, our turret sits a little bit higher than 0. So I don't want to just use the position. So I want to actually have it target the player, almost like targeting the player's turret. So I'm going to take this number here, Control C, and I'm going to say plus that number, F. And we don't need all of these, so we can just say, is that enough? Okay. I'll just say 0.4. That's fine. What am I missing here? Plus 0.4 F. I'm using an F. We should be okay. I'm not certain what it's having an issue with here. We'll see if after I finish this, if it's okay. So we're doing vector3 player direction equals new vector3 player transform position x, player transform position y, plus 0.4 f, comma, player transform position z, and then minus, forgot that, minus transform dot position. Okay, so this is subtracting our current object, which is our enemy's transform position, from all of this. Still don't know why I'm getting an error there, but we'll see if once it runs, if it keeps that error. I think it had a problem with me copying all of that in. So we're going to create another variable here. This will be float step equals speed, so that was up top, times time dot delta time. We could have also done this as float step times equals these, but this is fine. Okay, and then we have vector3. So vector 3 new direction equals vector 3 dot rotate towards. So rotate towards is going to be transform dot forward, comma, player dir, comma, step, comma, 0.0 f. Okay. And then, so that's going to cause the rotation for new direction to be set up. Then all we have to do is say transform dot rotation equals quaternion, which is how our rotation works. So for position we're using transform, for rotation we use quaternion. Dot look rotation, and into that we feed new direction, new dir. That should be it. I'm still getting this error here. I don't know why it wants to change this. Let's double click and see if that's the one it's talking about. Oh man, I was just doing that because I forgot my F up above. Okay. So I might have been able to use those other numbers that I had copied from here. So 4, 2, 4, whatever. Let's see if it allows that now. No, it does actually want a capital F there. Maybe, I don't know. Let's just go. Let's not break anything. Oh, what are we missing now? No, I typed 0.6. Literal of type double cannot be. That's really weird. Let's save it and see what Unity says, if it's going to give me the same issue. Okay, so that one's okay, and that one's okay now. Alright, whatever. Alright, so that's been saved. That's going to get put on our enemy turret. So enemy, let's see, target player, and that'll get put on this one, yeah. Oh, that's not our stationary one. No. Enemy stationary turret, that one. So target player gets put on there. That will fill in after, and I'll apply the changes that I just made to all the other ones, and we'll set this one's position at we'll say -10 and 10. And we shouldn't have to worry about the rotation because the turret is going to target our player. So let's just see if it's okay currently. And we can see it starts to rotate towards the player, which is good. So if we go up here, so you can see it starts to target us and makes it very difficult to deal with. But it works. So now we have a second type of enemy. So we have the ones that just move side to side. We have the ones that target us. Alright, that's going to do it for this video series as it is. If I have some more, just look forward to that on this channel. If you want to see some other things or how you might approach other things, leave me a comment just saying, you know, what you would like to see kind of done in Unity, how to, you know, maybe take this a little bit further. Maybe we could add in a HUD to it so it actually shows our player lives and health and things like that. So again, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that crap. And yeah, thanks.